The United Kingdom. A land of ancient castles, misty moors, and cobblestone streets steeped in 1,000 years of history. It's a place of royal pomp, literary genius, and breathtaking landscapes. But this long, layered history is written in blood, betrayal, and plague. Behind the quaint village pubs and within the grand stately homes, the past is not a distant memory, it is a resident. The UK is a tapestry of ghost stories, where every crumbling ruin and shadowy lane has a tale to tell. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the very heart of the ghost story. We are counting down the top 15 most haunted places in the UK, from the tower where princes vanish to the pubs where the dead still drink. But be warned. The spirits you will meet here are not fleeting shadows. They are the echoes of monarchs and murderers, of prisoners and plague victims. They are the soul of Britain, and they are desperate to be heard. 1. The Tower of London, England. A fortress, a palace, a prison. The very heart of British power for nearly 1,000 years, and a building so saturated with trauma and violent death that it is considered the most haunted building in the entire country. The history is a chronicle of executions, murders, and despair. This is where Anne Boleyn was beheaded, where the 2 young princes were allegedly murdered, and where countless others were tortured in the dungeons before meeting a bloody end on Tower Green. 2. Edinburgh Castle, Scotland. An impregnable fortress towering over the city from its volcanic perch, a stronghold that has witnessed sieges, battles, and centuries of dark history. The very rock it stands upon is said to be riddled with tunnels and caves, a literal underworld of lost souls. The history is one of relentless war and intrigue. From the wars of Scottish independence to its use as a military prison, the castle's stones have absorbed the energy of countless deaths. It was also the site of the infamous Witches' Well, where over 300 accused witches were burned at the stake. The paranormal encounter is diverse and relentless. The ghost of a lone piper who vanished in the tunnels centuries ago is still heard playing his mournful tune. A headless drummer boy appears on the battlements before a national tragedy. But the most common reports are of phantom prisoners from the Napoleonic Wars, who are seen in the vaults, and the aggressive, unseen force in the south cellars that pushes and shoves visitors. The climactic story comes from a tour guide. Leading a group through the ancient prisons, she saw the distinct apparition of a man in tattered 18th-century clothing, chained to the wall. He looked at her, his eyes pleading, and mouthed the word help before fading into the stone. The entire group felt a wave of cold despair, and one person captured a photograph showing a strange, misty orb exactly where the figure had been. Edinburgh Castle is a crown of stone atop a mountain of sorrow, and the wind that whips around its walls carries the whispers of the dead. 3. The Ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire, England. A crumbling, 12th-century building, one of the oldest inhabited houses in England, and widely regarded as the country's most terrifying haunted house, a nexus of dark energy built on an ancient pagan burial ground. The history is a cocktail of the blasphemous and the brutal. It was once a priest's house, but is also believed to have been the site of child sacrifice and devil worship. The previous owner, John Humphreys, claimed to have been attacked, levitated, and dragged from his bed by poltergeists. He documented over 20 distinct entities within the building. The paranormal encounter is violently physical. Visitors are scratched, bitten, and pushed down the steep, narrow stairs. The ghost of a witch is felt in the witch's room. The spirit of a murdered little girl sobs in the corner. But the most feared presence is a demonic, goat-like entity in the barn and an incubus that attacks male visitors in their sleep. He slept with the lights on for the rest of his life. The ancient Ram Inn is not just a building, it is a portal, and something on the other side is desperate to get through. 4. Chillingham Castle, Northumberland, England. A stark, medieval fortress on the volatile border between England and Scotland, a place built for war and cruelty. It is so infamous that its very name sends a shiver down the spine. The history is one of unrelenting harshness. The castle has a dedicated torture chamber, complete with a rack and an Iron Maiden. Prisoners were left to starve in the dungeons, and one former owner, John Sage, was a particularly brutal torturer during the reign of Elizabeth I. The pain inflicted here has soaked into the very stone. The paranormal encounter is a gallery of horrors. The ghost of the blue boy haunts the pink room, his mournful wails followed by a sudden blue light. The spirit of John Sage himself is seen and felt in the torture chamber, radiating malice. But the most active spirit is that of Lady Mary Berkeley, who is seen searching the castle for her husband, who ran off with her sister. The climactic story is one of the most famous in ghost lore. During renovations, workers found the skeletons of a man and a small boy walled up in a 10-foot thick wall. The boy was wearing a blue dress, a common practice for male children in the era. The moment the skeletons were discovered, the sightings of the blue boy and the sounds of his crying ceased. They had finally been found. Chillingham Castle is a monument to medieval savagery, where the ghosts are as cold and unforgiving as the stone they inhabit. 5. Pendle Hill, Lancashire, England. A brooding, imposing hill in the Lancashire countryside, forever associated with the most famous witch trials in English history. In 1612, 12 people from the surrounding area were accused of witchcraft, 10 were hanged. The history is a tragic tale of superstition and poverty. The Pendle witches were largely poor, elderly people, some of whom may have practiced folk magic. Their confessions, extracted under threat, created a legacy of fear and persecution that clings to the landscape. The paranormal encounter is one of lingering presence and magical energy. Visitors to the hill report feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched from the barren slopes. The sound of cackling laughter and chanting echoes in the wind. Some have seen the apparitions of women in ragged clothing, pointing bony fingers from the mist. Others report their electronic devices failing or their cameras capturing strange, orb-like lights. The climactic story involves a group of hikers. They were climbing the hill at dusk when a thick, unnatural fog descended. They heard the sound of a woman weeping, which turned into a furious scream. One hiker swears he saw the fleeting image of a woman with wild hair and piercing eyes, who shouted a curse in an old Lancashire dialect before vanishing. The hikers became disoriented and lost for hours, despite knowing the path well. Pendle Hill is a place where fear itself became a tangible force, condemning the innocent to death and their spirits to an eternal, vengeful vigil. 6. The Jamaica Inn, Cornwall, England. A lonely, 18th-century coaching inn, immortalized by Daphne du Maurier's novel of the same name, perched on the bleak Bodmin Moor, it was a notorious haven for smugglers and wreckers who lured ships to their doom. The history is one of lawlessness and murder. The inn's isolated location made it the perfect base for criminals. Tales abound of secret tunnels, hidden contraband, and violent fights that ended in death. Many a traveler is said to have vanished within its walls, never to be seen again. The paranormal encounter is rowdy and menacing. The sound of phantom horses and carriages pulls up outside. Disembodied voices argue in empty rooms. The apparition of a murdered smuggler is seen in the hallways. But the most common report is of a malevolent presence in the stable yard, a feeling of being stalked by something that means you harm. The climactic story comes from a former landlady. She was woken by the sound of a child sobbing outside her bedroom door. When she opened it, a small, cold boy in ragged clothes stood there, asking for his mother. She reached out to comfort him, but her hand passed straight through him. He let out a terrified wail and vanished. Research later revealed that a young boy, the son of a smuggler, had died of fever at the inn in the 19th century. The Jamaica Inn is a place where the rough, criminal spirit of old Cornwall is forever preserved, a refuge for ghosts who are still hiding from the law. 7. Borley Rectory, Essex, England. Dubbed the most haunted house in England by paranormal researcher Harry Price, the rectory itself burned down in 1939, but the legends and the hauntings persist on the empty site and in the adjacent church. The history is a saga of tragedy. The building was plagued by reports of phantom footsteps, ghostly writing on the walls, and the apparition of a nun who was supposedly walled up alive for having an affair with a monk from a nearby monastery. Subsequent residents reported being thrown from their beds and witnessing phantom coaches. The paranormal encounter, as documented, was intelligent and manipulative. Phenomena included ringing bells, thrown objects, and messages spelled out on walls. The ghost of the nun was the most frequently seen apparition, pacing the rectory garden in eternal sorrow. The climactic story is the legend of the nun. It is said that a previous resident, using a planchette, a precursor to the Ouija board, made contact with the spirit of the nun. She communicated that her name was Marie Lair and that she had been murdered on the site of the rectory. After the rectory burned, a woman's jawbone was found buried in the ruins, which was then given a Christian burial in the churchyard. Yet, sightings of the nun continue to this day. Borley Rectory proves that a building can be destroyed, but a powerful haunting can live on, forever tied to the land itself. 8. The Dunmore Pineapple, Scotland. A bizarre and beautiful 18th-century folly, a stone pineapple towering over a walled garden, a symbol of immense wealth and eccentricity. But this whimsical structure holds a dark secret of a broken heart. The history is a family tragedy. The Earl of Dunmore built the pineapple as a summer house. His daughter, Lady Catherine, fell in love with a common soldier. Forbidden from marrying him, she was locked away in the family estate. She eventually died of a broken heart, some say by suicide, pining for her lost love. The paranormal encounter is one of poignant sorrow. Visitors to the gardens report seeing the ghost of a young woman in a white dress, weeping near the base of the pineapple. The sound of a woman's soft crying is often heard coming from the upper chamber of the folly. Many feel a sudden, profound sadness when they approach, as if absorbing the residual grief of a centuries-old romance. The climactic story was told by a groundskeeper. He saw the figure of Lady Catherine not weeping, but standing at the highest point of the pineapple, looking out over the wall towards the road. She held a white handkerchief, which she waved slowly, as if signaling to someone. She then turned, looked directly at him with an expression of infinite sadness, and stepped off the edge, vanishing before she hit the ground below. The Dunmore Pineapple is a monument to a love that was forbidden, a gilded cage where a young woman's spirit is forever trapped. 9. The Skirrid Mountain Inn, Wales. Claiming to be the oldest pub in Wales, dating back to 1110, and a former courthouse and execution site. The pub's rustic charm belies a history of brutal justice that has left a permanent, chilling mark. The history is one of hanging judges. For centuries, the inn's upper floor served as a courtroom. Over 180 people were sentenced to death here, many for minor crimes like sheep stealing. They were then hanged from a beam still visible in the ceiling of the pub itself. The paranormal encounter is heavy and oppressive. The feeling of being watched is intense, particularly near the staircase and the former courtroom. The apparition of a hanged man, swinging from the beam, has been seen by multiple patrons. Others report the sound of phantom crowds, gavel bangs, and the smell of old rope and sweat. The climactic story involves a couple staying the night. They were woken by the sound of heavy footsteps pacing outside their room. Then, a cold presence entered, and they felt the mattress depress as if someone had sat on the end of their bed. A deep, raspy voice whispered, "Repent," before the presence vanished. They later learned their room was directly below the old courtroom. The Skirrid Mountain Inn is a place where you can literally drink in history, but be careful, the spirits here are more than just the kind served at the bar. 10. Pluckley, Kent, England. A picture-perfect English village in the Garden of England that holds the official title of the most haunted village in Britain, with at least 12 documented ghosts haunting its lanes, churchyard, and pubs. The history is a collection of local tragedies. From a highwayman who was pinned to a tree with his own sword, to a schoolmaster who burned to death in a field, to a grieving woman who lies in the churchyard, the village is a microcosm of English folklore. The paranormal encounter is a ghost tour in itself. The screaming woods are said to echo with the sounds of the schoolmaster's death. The ghost of the Red Lady haunts the churchyard, searching for her child's grave. The highwayman is seen reenacting his death near a specific tree. The Daring Arms pub is haunted by a poltergeist that moves glasses. The climactic story is that of the watercress woman. An old woman who sold watercress, she died when her clothes caught fire from her pipe. Her ghost, smelling of smoke and damp earth, is seen sitting on a bridge near the village. A driver, passing the bridge at night, swerved to avoid an old woman in the road. When he got out to check, there was no one there, but the distinct, smouldering smell of a recently extinguished pipe filled his car. Pluckley is not just a village, it is a living museum of the paranormal, where the line between the living and the dead is charmingly, and terrifyingly, blurred. 11. The Mermaid Inn, Rye, England. A stunning, half-timbered inn dating back to 1156, a place of creaking floors and low ceilings, that was once the headquarters of the notorious Hawkhurst gang of smugglers. The inn is a warren of secret passages and hidden rooms, perfect for hiding contraband and ghosts. The history is one of smuggling and murder. The gang was ruthless, and the inn was the scene of many a drunken brawl and secret meeting. A particularly violent member, George Gray, is said to have murdered a Spanish sailor in room 1. The paranormatic encounter is bustling and atmospheric. The sound of phantom revelry echoes from the Elizabethan room. The apparition of a woman in a grey dress, believed to be a smuggler's lover, is seen in the hallways. But the most famous ghost is that of a man in a grey suit who is seen sitting in a chair in one of the bedrooms before vanishing. The climactic story comes from a guest in room 16. She awoke to see two figures dressed in 18th century clothing standing at the foot of her four-poster bed, arguing in hushed, urgent tones. They seemed completely solid. She watched, frozen in fear, as they concluded their argument, turned, and walked straight through the solid wall. 12. Glamis Castle, Scotland. The legendary seat of the Earls of Strathmore, a fairy-tale castle of turrets and towers, and a place dripping with dark secrets, including the infamous monster of Glamis and a host of other spectral residents. The history is shrouded in aristocratic mystery. The castle is the childhood home of the Queen Mother and the setting for Shakespeare's Macbeth. Its most chilling legend is of a hideously deformed heir, the monster, who was kept hidden in a secret room his entire life. The paranormal encounter is rich and varied. The Grey Lady, a ghost who plays the organ, is heard in the chapel. The tongueless woman runs across the roof, unable to scream. A phantom African boy sits sadly on a stone seat. But the most terrifying presence is felt in the crypt, a windowless room where something malevolent is said to reside. The climactic story is the secret of the monster. It is said that a workman accidentally discovered the hidden room and the terrible secret within. He was sworn to secrecy on threat of death and was then sent to Australia, where he told the story on his deathbed. The location of the room is known only to the Earl, his heir, and the family lawyer. The weight of this terrible secret is said to be the source of much of the castle's haunting energy. Glamis Castle is a beautiful facade hiding a labyrinth of secrets, where the sins of the aristocracy have created a ghostly population of their own. 13. Bury Pomeroy Castle, England. A romantic, ivy-clad ruin in a deep wooded valley, gifted to the Duke of Somerset in the 16th century. But this picturesque shell is considered the most haunted castle in England, plagued by the ghosts of two tragic women from the Seymour family. The history is a Tudor drama of jealousy and murder. The White Lady is thought to be the spirit of Margaret Pomeroy, imprisoned in the dungeons by her jealous sister, Eleanor, and left to starve to death. The Blue Lady is said to be the ghost of a Norman woman who lures men into dangerous parts of the ruin. The paranormal encounter is deeply unsettling. The White Lady is seen high in the castle walls, waving for help. Those who see her are overcome with a feeling of suffocation and despair. The Blue Lady is more aggressive, her presence bringing a bone-chilling cold. She is often blamed for camera malfunctions and feelings of being followed. The climactic story was experienced by a pair of paranormal investigators. They were in the dungeons when they heard the sound of a woman sobbing. Their temperature gauge plummeted. Then, one of them felt an invisible hand close around his throat, choking him. His partner captured a photograph in the flash, a pale, skeletal face with 14. The Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, London. The oldest theatre site still in use in London, a place of magic, laughter, and applause, and home to several friendly ghosts, including the Man in Grey, its most famous and frequently seen spectral patron. The history of the theatre spans over 350 years, encompassing fires, triumphs, and tragedies. The Man in Grey is believed to be the ghost of a man from the 18th century whose skeletal remains were found walled up in a side passage during renovations in 1848. He had a knife in his ribs. The paranormal encounter is one of benign, theatrical presence. The Man in Grey, dressed in a powdered wig, grey cloak, and tricorn hat, is seen walking through the upper circle during rehearsals, often before a successful production. Other ghosts include the comedian Joseph Grimaldi and a former clown, both of whom are said to mess with the lights and props. The climactic story is a famous theatre legend. During a rehearsal for a new musical, the director was growing frustrated. He looked up to the upper circle and saw the man in grey, sitting in his usual seat. The director, on a whim, shouted, "Well, what do you think?" The figure, who had never before interacted with anyone, slowly and deliberately gave a thumbs-up sign. The musical was a smash hit. The man in grey is considered the theatre's most valued critic. The Theatre Royal is a place where the show must go on, even for the audience members who have had a ticket for the afterlife for over 2 centuries. 15. Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh, Scotland. A sprawling, ancient cemetery in the heart of Edinburgh's Old Town, and the site of the most violent and well-documented poltergeist case in history, centered on a single, locked tomb, the Black Mausoleum. The history is one of unparalleled cruelty. In the 17th century, the cemetery was used as a prison for over 1,000 Covenanters, Presbyterians who defied the king. They were subjected to torture, starvation, and exposure. The man in charge, Sir George Bluedy Mackenzie, built a mausoleum for himself nearby. In 1999, a homeless man broke into the tomb, falling through the floor into a pit of skeletons. He unleashed something terrible. The paranormal encounter is physically dangerous. The entity, known as the Mackenzie poltergeist, is intensely aggressive. It attacks visitors, leaving them with scratches, bruises, and burns. People are pushed, punched, and choked. The air around the mausoleum is freezing, and many report feeling overwhelming nausea and terror. Over 500 physical attacks and countless fainting spells have been documented. The climactic story is why Greyfriars is number 1. A tour guide was leading a group past the mausoleum when a woman was suddenly thrown to the ground by an unseen force. She was dragged several feet across the gravel, screaming, her body contorted. She was later found to have over a dozen deep scratches on her back and legs, and her jacket was torn to shreds. She had no memory of the event. Greyfriars Kirkyard is not a resting place, it is a battleground. It is the absolute pinnacle of paranormal activity, where a concentration of historical suffering has created a sentient, malevolent force that is still, to this day, attacking the living. You have now walked the haunted halls of the tower, braved the moors of Pendle, and faced the poltergeist of Greyfriars. You have met the ghosts of queens and commoners, of witches and soldiers. You have seen that the long history of the United Kingdom is not just in its history books, but in its very atmosphere, a palpable energy that whispers from every stone. So, we have to ask you, after hearing these 15 tales from across the UK, would you dare to spend a night in the ancient Ram Inn, or walk the paths of Greyfriars after dark? Or would you prefer a seat at the Theatre Royal, hoping for a glimpse of a friendly ghost? Let us know in the comments which of these British hauntings you would be most, and least, afraid to experience for yourself. If these stories have made you look at the UK's ancient landscape in a new light, help us share these tales, give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend who loves a history lesson from the other side.